preparation for the Caribbean Regional Youth Council's upcoming election, we are here today sitting with one of the candidates for the Vice President, Policy and Advocacy, Mr. Shamar Wedderburn. We are hoping that he can share with you, the members of the regional youth councils, national youth councils, and youth organizations around the region, insights on his policies, his programs, and plans for the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. So, good afternoon, Shamar. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing really, really good today.
That's always interesting. So, can you tell us a little bit about who is Shamar Wedderburn for those who may be out there that may not be familiar with the man?
Right. So, thank you. So, Shamar Wedderburn is an individual that I think the first word that always comes out is the energy and passion. I have to lead with that. That's my everyday thing. But behind that as well, but that always hasn't been, because someone asked me the other day about my journey to this point, and one thing I would say is my journey to this point perhaps wasn't as conventional as you would expect when you meet me today. You know, much before, I was always one that involved in activities as debate and helping young persons and speaking when I was at high school level and with my club. But I really think for me, I think it was really entering into university space in terms of I had an appreciation for certain things. It was around that age where I started questioning and wanting a lot more out of not just myself, but for the purpose. And I think entering a regional university at that time was one that really allowed you to start to dive deep into these issues. And funny enough, around that time was then perfect, that not just the regional university, but then involves already in a regional organization like the regional US that core. Thankfully enough to be a VP of alumni relations, having to go through people and programs. And then, just a year later, being a president of a regional group. It's those experiences that have made, and just how my introduction to actually CRYC, funny enough, almost a year to the day. But like you said, all of these things come in alignment just because from there we would have been involved with training and development of the region, writing, interacting. But really and truly, what has always stayed the same, like I told you, that passion, is that just gave me an opportunity to realize how to learn more just about how perhaps we aren't so different from each other. How perhaps I do need to learn a lot more so I can adapt and just be more impactful. And so that has led to now, for example, even being from this regional space, even when I always wasn't the leader or the chair, that's now led to me working with the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network, Saipan, working in technical committee of circular economy. These spaces have just allowed us to recognize, and I've really built up my skills of project management, strategic planning, and have really allowed me to focus. But again, all of this kind of revolves around me with this story. And why I'm running is because for me, this started because I gave myself an opportunity to say yes. For the one time I decided I was ready to be that person in the job. And so equally, I believe my running is there's a lot of young persons around the region, across the council, like this, waiting for an opportunity, a platform, a chance for their confidence to say yes, and I want to help that.
With that context, what do you foresee as some of the major challenges facing the CRYC moving forward, and even more so, the challenges related to policy and advocacy?
Right, and I love that we started there. So just consider what we spoke about already. I think one of the first things is really alignment. Because we mentioned that a while ago in terms of the context of the digital space, we've had to align, but I think no more than ever it's important that we're fixed in our purpose. So if we talk about SDG goals and Paris Agreement, those issues, this time no more than ever requires that we realize how every one project plan fits part of a greater whole, and that we're continuously on this mission. These organizations, young people all desire this as well, and this goes into many other issues. So if we talk about the Paris Agreement, there's a lot of biodiversity issues that perhaps we're neglecting during this time. There's a lot with the circular economies that social impact startups have been affected. We already know the issues they will have with funding and everything. But I think as well, when we really talk about inclusion, and really, I want to even add on to inclusion and to just say how we're affecting the personal engagement. Because there are people we're not reaching. We know that they're vulnerable groups, but I go as far as to say right now in this difficult time, a lot of persons have been vulnerable even when we don't realize. Mental health has been on the brink. The persons that are meeting with us in Zoom and they're smiling, and I think it's so important now, first to not just, as always, engage these persons, but I think we have to reconnect. I said to someone the other day about rebuilding a kind of spirit of Caribbean, and we have to reignite their energies when we reach them to say we understand and we're kind of here to do this now. That has to include everybody. Young people at all levels, professionals, youth councils, organizations, disadvantaged groups, because that has to be, in this time, CRYC has to be adding value now more than ever before.
And how do you propose to, as you mentioned, alignment, assure that the alignment of the programs, policies of the CRYC then feed into the issues of national and regional governments, and how do you propose that the relationships that are needed are built, sustained, and maintained?
Right, so I think one most important thing that I think we haven't said so far is really listening and dialogue. I think that's really undervalued during this time, and not just for the posterity or formality, but actually at every single level. I think it's so underrated to hear an idea and to conversate and to ensure we're intentional about that listening, because when we listen and engage and dialogue and note and write down, what we want to just do is not just argue and bark down at even the policy makers to get this into operation. One of the points in which I even mentioned as we start into it is just the development of a Caribbean think tank. There's a lot of persons now in this space that requires that we'll have to be a bit more strategic in our approach. We might have to, before, turn statistics, data to actually show what we're actually saying and everything, and to turn this. What we want to do is not just a simple step process there. That starts the conversation. And when that starts the conversation, primary research, secondary, gathering lives, data, social audio rooms, and conversate what we're writing down. And at the same time, and I wrote this down in one of the things on page 2 of your proposal, is that this is not supposed to be isolated. At the same time we're doing this, we want to be an educational campaign all at the same time. Again, everything digital, social media. What this does, this ensures that at all times, when we're working in the background, we're also speaking. When we're also speaking, we're gathering information, and in all ways we're showing out and providing the value. This will go on, but ultimately this will get to the step that we have to be influencing regional conversation.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of challenges there. We realize that there are a lot of critical issues that as BP policy and advocacy you'll be trying to address within that space. How do you propose to practically address these challenges? What are some of your plans, your proposals for this space?
Right, so I started mentioning one of them there. One of the central ideas and pillars that I've really wanted to get out that encompasses my entire campaign, I mentioned building a kind of spirit of Caribbean activism. But I think no more than ever, this time demands that perhaps not just doing things we've never seen before, but changing our approach. We have to not let COVID-19 slow the trajectory, but allow us to thrive. And one thing I've identified to do all of this really is the need for us to refocus and recenter back ourselves with data and research and information during this time as well. And as well, the CRYC is one that has always, in our vision statement, aimed to be a strategic governance movement, showing one representation, one voice. And we have to engender and hammer that point home. But how do we do that? And that is why we want to start the conversation. We have to show in every single way we are doing the things that we say we are supposed to be doing. So we talk about data and research and statistics. What we're doing there is through the think tank. That's not just a one-off initiative. That's something which over a period of time, through having writers, gathering young people, editors, persons to help us scribe, gather, speak, have projects. That's allowing us now, in that sense, to ultimately having position papers, publications, papers. So when we have advocacy in that sense, we want to can present, here's what we've gathered. We had the Caribbean Regional Development Survey last year actually, and we had our approximately 500 responses. And these are the things that young persons have been facing, a lot of personal things. What they want to see now is not, when we say we advocate, we have to be making sure we're doing so effectively. Governments have a lot of youth banging on their doors. We have to make sure that we are being intentional.
We've heard a lot about the policy and advocacy space, and we realize that for a lot of what needs to be done through policy and advocacy requires positive interaction with not only the other VPs, but positive interaction with the national youth councils, youth bodies, how do you propose and foresee the vice chair, policy and advocacy, playing a role in navigating and managing these interactions of everybody?
Right, so I think one thing that's also very important is the policy and advocacy. Vice chair has to also be responsible for internal policy developments, even within our members, and that has to involve any single thing that can help us in that space. I mentioned before just the importance of the listening, but of course gathering that energy back with young people. That's everywhere. That's every single way. We talk about alignment, and it starts really there. It's no point for me to sit in my corner and to make a manifesto of 10 pages and to say, here's what I believe, here's what's the best thing. But it's for myself and Christopher to sit down and discuss, here's the visions and the things we're trying to create. Because again, to be a strategic governance movement, we have to be moving in a movement as one. And so we have to get persons this idea. This would mean that in order for me to even start to do that think tank plans, it means I have to sit down and even create the structure and the advocacy and the environment for us to create that. That'll mean I have to speak to persons. That'll mean I have to hear what is the young man from Trinidad's perspective. How does he believe that on the issues we can be addressing? But the idea is at every single point, we have to ensure being impactful and adding value in this space. This again, I mentioned in my proposal, the CRYC space, another issue we have is just reaching collaborations and partnerships and gathering support. So funding is a difficult time for ourselves and our members. But I've wrote down in agenda that's important that it has to start with purpose and alignment. Because when you go to stakeholders, persons who grant funding and grants of organizations, we have to be able to tell them, here's our initiatives, here's our project, here's our idea. Here is what we have been doing. And that is one plan I have in order to start strategic partnerships. So it's not, I'm just going to do partnerships. We have to build around this brand, because we've started a rebrand, and remind persons, here's what we're doing, here's who we are, and gather persons towards us, build partnerships from there.
Actually, you have me wishing that I had a time machine that I could have actually gone through the time machine and come back into that space where I may have actually voted for you in this election. But you know, you have laid a lot on the table, a lot of positive energy, a lot of positive plans and programs. Is there, you know, anything else that you would like to leave the youths out there?
I think I said to someone the other day that this election is so important for many reasons, not just for the simple moment of getting into office or votes, but it's a time in which we have to, and all youth spaces have to be inspiring hope and a kind of positive energy for persons who are really struggling. The Regional Development Survey, thanks to our excellent research team, has shown persons have been suffering domestic abuse, mental health. We have to, through our own election, to our messages, be showing that we're galvanizing a kind of energy everywhere. Every youth of every space, student leadership, every grass movement, every single voice concerned. And that's one thing I want to do with my campaign. If you're rebuilding a spirit of, we have to bring that in every single way. I'm one that will go through every single message one by one to hear what you have to say with that. I almost say Caribbean youth, we have to allay. It's time to go, we have to for this space, and that represents why I'm running. This is bigger than just me, but this is recreating the spirit that perhaps would have dampened COVID to remind ourselves that yes, we can thrive, yes, we can add value.
I'm going to ask just one final question now.
Yes.
What makes Shamar the best man for the job?
What makes Shamar the best man is that I started talking about my personal attributes, about I'm a one-on-one kind of leader and the passions and energies, but I'm one that as well calculated and patient. I understand the context and where we are. I've been working at least a year and a half. You mentioned Trade Development, the strategic planning action team, helping with the research team, that technical policy aspect, constitutional review, and I think I understand where we are. I speak to people. I feel the pulse of what persons are asking for, the councils, and I think I'm one that brings that tenacity to say, I will fight on your behalf and galvanize all of us. And I think that's what we want to do. So Caribbean youth, allez.
Well done. And thank Shamar for this opportunity to, interview you, to hear some of your thoughts, your perspectives. It has been enlightening, and I will say, good luck.
Thank you.
Everybody, allez. It's time to get up and start moving.